Tomorrow's She-Hulk Attorney at Law debuts on Disney+. I've seen the first 4 episodes, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on She-Hulk Attorney at Law, or if you haven't seen it yet, what's your excitement level for it? I'd love to hear your take. And let's get started talking about the good. Right off the bat, the lead actress, Tatiana Maslany, just has a great screen presence. She kind of oozes charisma. She has great chemistry with everyone, and she has solid comedic timing, which is great because this is a situational comedy. But you have to keep in mind, like, she's playing scenes right out of the gate across from Mark Ruffalo, who's been playing the Hulk for 10 years now, and he doesn't dominate the scenes, he doesn't take over. She can be toe-to-toe right there with him and have just as strong of a screen presence. And in other episodes, she's with Wong, Tim, Roth, Abomination, and have a strong screen presence. Another fun thing about this show is that it's designed to kind of fill in the gaps of what happens between all of the big, epic battles. It's not about trying to stop this big bad out there. It's about what's the Hulk doing with his cousin between big Avengers initiatives. And the conversations they have. There's just kind of some nice touches where you kind of learn about even how Bruce Banner was funded and his relationship with Tony Stark, how people perceive of Steve Rogers in the in-between. Not the epic stuff, not the things we see in the movies, but what's happening in the world in all the moments in between. That's just kind of a nice little touch to have a show dedicated to that exclusively. Along those same lines, it's one of the most connected projects outside of the Avengers movies. And what I mean by that is you just feel all of these different characters and franchises kind of seamlessly integrating into this story. Naturally, the character is related to Bruce Banner, so there's a connection there, but then because of her job as an attorney working with superpowered individuals, all of these other characters kind of naturally interact with her a little bit, and it makes sense that we're spending time with Abomination and kind of learning what's he been up to for the last 15 years. Likewise, it takes like a throwaway little moment and scene in Shang-Chi and then puts it in this whole other context. And so it just finds ways to really tie together a bunch of the MCU in interesting ways that you're not really expecting. And they're not big and flashy, and so they feel organic and natural. Another thing that worked for me is that it actually feels like a TV show, not a 4-hour movie cut up into 6 episodes. So each episode introduces a conflict that's resolved by the end. There are serialized elements, there's like little cliffhanger things at the end of each episode, but each story is self-contained and comes to a close by the end. And I think that'll serve this show really well. A lot of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, I feel like they've struggled because they have about enough story for a 2-hour movie, but it's 6 episodes and about 4 hours long, so it just feels like a little bit of fluff and the wrong compromise. This, I think, will play better as a full season. And finally, there's just something kind of charming and endearing about a character in the MCU that has superpowers, that's not trying to be a superhero or a supervillain. They're just trying to live their life and figure out how to balance day-to-day life with the fame that comes with having superpowers that other people know about them. So it's a very different type of story that lets you explore this world and explore the fame and certain aspects of the MCU that have only been lightly touched on before. But unfortunately, for the most part, these 4 episodes didn't work for me as a whole. There's elements that I liked, but they didn't work as a whole, so let's move on to the bad. And the first thing that comes to mind here for something that didn't work all that well for me was the humor. It's very hit or miss. Absolutely, every single episode had at least one joke or a couple jokes that made me laugh out loud, several more that made me chuckle. But then there's a lot more jokes that just didn't fully land. And because the show's just leaning so hard into the jokes and playing it so kind of goofy at times, when a joke doesn't land, it very much falls into the cringe category. Likewise, there's a lot of kind of this observational meta humor in the show. The lead character breaks the fourth wall, looks at the camera a lot, talks to it about what's going on. And most of that didn't feel earned to me. it felt like a really cheap way to make a joke rather than an earned observational commentary or something like that. In particular, there's a joke where she says something like, hey, don't get distracted by all the cameos. Remember who's the lead of the show? And that just rang so hollow to me because it's a show where they did decide to put guests in so many of the episodes. And then they marketed the show as, hey, look, it's Wong. Hey, look, it's Hulk. Hey, look, it's Daredevil. And so when you try to do like this meta commentary of calling out people that just want cameos, you marketed the show that way. So I don't feel it's not earned to make that sort of commentary in a show like this. Along these same lines, the overall tone and vibe of the show doesn't feel like it meshes with the rest of the MCU. So many sequences are so jokey and over the top, it just doesn't feel like it fits with what came before. It doesn't feel like it fits in the same universe where Iron Man, Captain America, the First Avenger took place. This is very much the same issue that I had with Thor: Love and Thunder, where it felt like that movie got so jokey with him doing Jean-Claude Van Damme split kicks that it fell into the category more like self-parody, more so than doing a comedy inside of the MCU. The MCU has always had comedies, always had lots of humor. This is going so far into it, leaning so hard into it, being so irreverent that it just doesn't feel like it matches the universe that's already been established. I mean, I get that it's a comedy, but there's like sequences where like a influencer with superpowers just bursts into a courtroom. The way that it handles someone misusing the mystical arts just doesn't line up. It doesn't feel consistent with the rules of the universe that we've spent 14 years in at this point in time. And probably the ultimate example of this was the way that they tried to incorporate some of these guest appearances and the cameos, where Abomination does not remotely feel like the same character that he was in The Incredible Hulk. In order to fit him into the tone of this show and make him a comedic character, they have to totally change his characterization into something else, where he's dumbed down and a lot goofier. And it just feels so much like in their desire to design shows for a variety of different audiences, they're sacrificing the integrity of characters for the sake of a joke. And all of a sudden it stops feeling like a cohesive, consistent universe. And finally, they made some odd choices in the way they decided to introduce the lead character that really rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, I thought all along the actress herself is very charming and fun to watch, but she's written in a way that makes her kind of off-putting. At least it did to me in the first episode. In my initial reaction, I used the phrase, she's too smug to be likable, and I got a lot of flack for that on Twitter and in the comment section. And when I say that, I was specifically referring to the first episode, where very early on, I don't want to get too much into spoilers and break too many things down, but very early on, she gets her powers and Hulk is trying to help her. And instead of being grateful, asking questions, being curious, she's very smug towards the Hulk, who's been the Hulk for 15 years, and she's been the Hulk, had Hulk powers for 15 minutes. Anytime you have a new character talking down to an established character who's trying to help, it's just not a very good way to introduce someone if you want me to like them. Now, as the show went along and it got more involved in kind of her personal life and her career and what she's trying to do, and it was more in that direction, she was a lot more likable, charming, and I was getting invested in the journey. So 4 episodes in, I'm not totally won over yet. There's some things that I liked, some things that were charming, endearing, some potential here, but also a lot of things that on first watch just didn't sit right with me, felt out of place in the MCU, and a lot of jokes just didn't land for me. I'm hoping that as I spend more time with this character in this version of the MCU with these types of stories, I'll kind of get used to it, because it's a pretty dramatic tone shift from what has been established in the past for the MCU. And so when you do something new, experience something different, it takes a little while to get acclimated to it. I'm hoping once I get acclimated to this show, I'll like it a little bit more. As of right now, it's not really working for me on the whole. But that's just my take on it. A ton of people over on Twitter were loving this show. They thought it was an absolute blast, thought it was hilarious. So just because I didn't like it, just because it didn't work all that well for me, doesn't mean that you won't enjoy the show. In particular, if you dug the trailers, you'll probably like this show more than I did, and I'm hoping to be won over by the time thing's over with. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.